Hi, and welcome to You Better. My name is Julia Maddox, and I'm your host. This is based off a quote from Maya Angelou, one of my favorite quotes. You did then what you knew how to do. When you knew better, you did better. So I'm really excited. That's you better. And I'm really excited today that I'm interviewing one of my dear friends, Mr. Hal Eisenberg. Hal, how are you today?
Good. Thank you, Julia. Thanks for having me.
You know what? It's one of the great things I love that I'm interviewing you is that you are so busy. The only time I have time to talk to you is when I'm interviewing you. So this is great. We're going to have some opportunities to actually catch up. Great. So first, Windows of Opportunity, nonprofit organization. Yes. You do have all sorts of great programs for teenagers, which we're going to get into. But first, let me get a little background on you. Okay. Where were you born?
I was actually born in the Bronx.
Ah, in the Boogie Down Bronx. Very good, very good. Home. And then you moved to Queens when?
I think I was 4 or 5 years old when I moved to Queens and grew up in Queens, basically.
And so you pretty much always lived here?
Pretty much.
Pretty much always.
Yeah, I traveled the world a little bit, but here and there. But
how did you get into social work?
How did I get into social work?
Because you have a master's in social work, right?
I have a master's in social work, yeah. So this is a 28-minute show, so the short version is I was always doing community service as a kid. You know, I was an Eagle Scout. I love scouting. I love making a difference. And then I guess in my late teens, I kind of got lost a little bit, and then in my early 20s, I started volunteering for the Samuel Field Y in Little Neck. And
the what?
The Samuel Field Y in Little Neck.
Okay.
And they were a community service agency that is doing some tremendous stuff here in Queens. And I got a real great taste for working with youth. And through there, I said, you know, I want to do more. And another mutual friend of ours, Regina, said,
Hi, Regina.
Hi, Regina. Said that you'd be a natural social worker. So I was like, what does that entail? And next thing I knew, I was at Delphi University, and I was president of the Social Work Council, and I was soaking up all the knowledge and doing some great events and programs, and I've just been doing it ever since.
So from there, you worked in schools, right?
Yes.
You were a school social worker for how long?
I was in and out of schools for probably, well, I'm still in and out of schools, but I started working in the school system in 1997, and I'm still there.
You're still there?
Yeah.
Okay. When did, now Windows of Opportunity, when did you found Windows, WOO as we call it, Windows of Opportunity, WOO. When did you found WOO? I
found Windows of Opportunity in 2002 after 9/11, and it was in memory of my Aunt Barbara, who was a first responder. She was down at Ground Zero every day for 6 months after the towers came down, and she, about a year later, from complications from everything that she had inhaled, you know, we lost her at the young age of 49, and she was my biggest fan, and she had known that I wanted to start Windows of Opportunity, and she was like, you should do it, you should do it, and I was always a little scared to make that jump, and after she passed, that was the catalyst to be like, I'm going to do this in her memory. And
I didn't know that. I didn't know any of that. Oh, my. You are so amazing.
Thank you.
So, well, let's see. Let's talk about some of the programs that WOO offers. Sure. Go down the list. Your big one is Short Stack.
Yes.
Short Stack is, you want to tell them a little bit about Short Stack?
Yeah, so Short Stack is a modeling and fashion program that's really designed to change the way that we're looking at the modeling industry. And I think that's really kind of like what everything at Windows is. We're trying to really shift the way that we educate and empower people, and kids and adults.
And who's it for?
Tell
the story about how it started. That's what's really cool.
Sure. Short Stack started from a 15-year-old girl who was really amazing on the runway. Olivia. And she wanted to be a real model in the industry. And the industry kind of kept shutting the door in her face constantly. And she turned around and... Because
she's how tall?
She is 5'1".
5'1", so she was too short.
I think she's even lying about that. I think she's 5 3/4 in.
Every time I've seen her, she's wearing high heels.
Super high heels. So, so we got into this whole conversation about the industry and how she should go out and she should, you know, change the industry. And she turned around and she was like, "You don't know anything about the modeling industry." She's like, "They're never gonna accept short models." And I said, "Well, why don't you create something to change that?" And she came back a couple of weeks later and said, I've got this idea for this program called Short Stack. And she's like, we could raise money for Windows, we can give girls an opportunity to learn about the fashion industry, and we can do big fashion shows and photo shoots. And I thought I was just supporting, you know, some random, like, I was, you know, sure, we'll do it. And the next thing I know, we had girls lined up around the block wanting to be in this program. Everybody feeling the same about us wanting to change the definition of what the word beauty is.
Yeah.
So we have girls all different shapes, sizes, just the only qualification is they're short.
They're short. Perfect.
They're short.
Now, how many years have you been doing this? What year are you up to now?
We're up to year 8 in short stack now.
Year 8. And your fashion shows usually when in June?
It's usually in June. We're actually, today was auditions for the event earlier, and we do an 8-month training program. So it's all about, it's not even just about modeling and fashion now. It's about self-esteem, it's about leadership, it's about loving yourself for who you are. We do workshops and trainings on HIV awareness and eating disorders, and so they get a full 8-month program, and then it all builds up to professional photo shoots and then a Fifth Avenue fashion show. Yeah,
so this is like a big event. It sells out every year.
It sells out every year. It raises the most money. It's our biggest event for Windows of Opportunity.
Yeah. And you have all sorts of sponsors. It's like a major runway show.
Pepsi. This year I think we're going to have Starbucks sponsoring.
Starbucks is going to support. Oh wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. So let's talk about some of your other programs. Sure. Tell me about Woo Films.
Woo Films. It's a great program. I love Woo Films because, I mean, media, you can do so much with media, you know, and I think that's always been my attraction to Woo Films. So we had this idea of doing these, like, kind of like television shows like this and really featuring youth, and that's how it kind of started.
Can we, Director, can we cut to the picture of the kid shooting the shot? There's some pictures I want the audience to see. That's really important to me that they get to see pictures of, like, the kid directing, and then there's another picture of there's a great picture. That's the great picture. Who's the lady in the picture?
Oh, that's Orly, and she actually, this is really interesting. This is actually at our Woo Film Awards that we do every year. So the Woo Film started out with this little idea that's now grown into this big idea where we actually feature different youth films or films that are impacting youth. And Orly did a film called Kindness Boomerang. That I think it's up to like 10 million, 14 million hits on YouTube, and she got invited to be at TED Talks, and hopefully we're going to be working with her on some future film projects as well. So
that's so cool. That's so cool. So you have Short Stack, you have Woo Films. What else? What other programs do you guys do?
We have a lot of programs. We have 14 different programs. We have 10 different leadership empowerment curriculums.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you go into schools and do these, or do the kids come to you?
Both. We actually go. We have kids coming to us, and a lot of times we're going into schools. So we're looking to be in as many schools as possible, and we do curriculum surrounding all sorts of youth issues today. So we're looking at issues around bullying and violence and drugs and HIV and AIDS and safe sex and eating disorders and self-injury and so on.
Yeah,
and so forth.
let's talk about that, because that's something that I really want to talk about teenagers for a bit, because I can't think of anybody better to talk about than you. I'm reading a little bit. There's a new book by the lady Rosalind Weissman. I don't know if you've heard of her. She wrote the book Queen Bees and Wannabes that the movie Mean Girls was based off of.
Okay.
So she has a brand new book out, and it's called Masterminds and Wingmen, and it's about teenage boys. She had like 200 teenage boys that she worked with, and she talks a lot about she thinks it's tougher these days for boys than girls, teenage boys. What do you think?
You know, I think that's a really interesting question, you know, because, I mean, in my field of work, my philosophy, you know, I always look at boys and girls as, you know, as the same. And I know there'll be probably a lot of people that would debate me on that, but I look at everybody as a human being. So when you look at numbers like that, you know, and people are saying, you know, are girls getting ahead more or boys getting ahead more, I'm always going to take it to the next level and be like, what's the story behind that? You know, is there a reason that girls are getting ahead more? Is it the educational system? You know, what's the story? You know, where are we doing those studies? You know?
Yeah, what's going? Interesting. I believe I'm not exactly 100% sure this statistic, but I believe the statistic was 80% of high school valedictorians are girls.
Interesting.
That the data that is coming out is that boys tend to be pulling back and not wanting to be star students.
You know, I think the question comes down to, you know, what is a star student? You know, because if you look at a lot of the youth I work with, you know, I have youth that have, you know, 65, 70, 75 averages and running global conferences.
Yeah.
You know, so to me, I would say that they're a star student, successful. You know,
that's true. Yeah, it depends on how you measure star.
Right. How do you
is it like academics? Is it what comes up on paper? Or is it is it IQ or is it EQ? Is it emotional quotient or emotional intelligence or book learning, as my dad would say?
Right.
Book learning. What is it about? Another topic that keeps coming that comes up is, what is it about lying in teenagers? I'm hearing a lot of this. Seems to be a topic in the media lately. What is it about? Is teenagers and not wanting to tell the truth to adults? I mean, I know that's probably universal, but what's your secret?
What's my secret?
Yeah.
With lying teenagers?
Yeah. Or just you know what? Here's my real question. How do you get teenagers to talk to you?
How do I get teenagers to talk to me? You know, I treat them with respect, and there's a mutual respect. So I believe that youth have a voice, and I believe that they have ideas, and they have legitimate intellectual ideas, and they're human beings in this planet, and they're seeing things from a different perspective, and maybe not as skewed as some adults are seeing it with, with a lot of the stuff that, we've grown up with.
Yeah.
And they have a fresh perspective. And I'm really interested and genuinely interested in hearing what they have to say, what their opinions are, and what their ideas are. So if somebody comes to me, like Short Stack, and says, listen, I have this idea, I'm like, okay, let's do it. Somebody comes to me with a film program and says, we need to do a film on dating abuse, which we're working on. It's like, okay, this is a big issue. Somebody wants to say something.
Yeah.
And I think we have to take what youth are looking at and respect them. And I think when they see that genuineness and they see that our programs are geared toward giving them that voice, I think they just open up.
Is it, so look, what I'm really hearing you say is you actually pay attention to what they say.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. What other advice would you give parents who are having, let's say, parents who are having a difficult time with their teenager in terms of communication?
Be open. Don't be quick to always shut down and judge and be like, I know better. Because let's face, sometimes parents do know better. I mean, a lot of times they know better. But from a youth perspective, if there's a conflict there, a lot of times they're crying out for love, or they're crying out to be heard, or they're crying out to be like, I want to know that I matter. So I think for parents, it's parenting is very difficult nowadays. And I think there's this idea in society that parents are supposed to be perfect, and and the parents are responsible, and parents are struggling just as much to find out who they are and what their voice is.
Exactly.
And with my son, it's like I tell him, listen, your father's struggling with X, Y, and Z, and I'm a human being. And he's like, I totally get that. And he's like, I'm struggling, and we have that open conversation.
So you're just honest with them about what's going on in your life.
Honest, be real.
Now that I think about it, I have this cousin, my Aunt Sarah's son. I'm not going to, probably shouldn't identify him, but she said my Aunt Sarah had 4 kids. I believe it was 4 kids. And my cousin, he was the youngest, and he felt like his parents didn't pay any attention to him. So he would take all the spoons in the kitchen and hide them all around the house as a way, like I remember going over one time, I'm like, why is there a spoon on top of the picture frame? Or why is there a spoon at just random places? Right. And my aunt would be like, oh, that's your cousin. This is his way. When we see spoons around the house, we're supposed to think of him. It was awesome. Just something he used to do, is just to say, hey, you don't pay enough attention to me. Right. But so you talked about how to build leadership in kids. What about teenagers and video games? Because a lot of because what's the big Grand Theft Auto? Was it Grand Theft Auto 5 came out? Yeah. And I mean, I don't have children, but I was thinking to myself, I don't know if I'd want my kids to play that. But as I understand it, I love video games. Right. I'm from that generation. I had the Atari and all of this, but and I used to live at the arcade when I was a kid. Are you kidding me? But this is different, and for a lot of parents, it's a concern. What do you think about teenagers and video games? It's a great question, and as you're asking me that question, I'm reminded of, we actually do this activity in one of our leadership curriculums where we have an activity where it's around controversial questions, and we have a
agree, disagree, maybe. And one of the questions we asked, does video games lead to violence in real life? And we watch the kids split to each side of the room whether they agree or disagree. And it's really interesting to listen to their point of view. And a lot of times it comes down to a lot of kids saying, yeah, sometimes it does lead to violence, but it doesn't lead to violence because of the video games. It leads to violence because of the values that particular kid is learning, and where are they learning those values. So I think we live in a society that really is quick to say it's video games' fault.
No, I don't think that.
Right. Well, but a lot of people will say that, and it's like, did Grand Theft Auto teach that kid to do that? Or does, because on the other side of the room, there's the youth that are saying, we play to release our tension. We play to give us a break from homework, and I'm not going to pick up an M16 and go shoot out the store, up the block. So, right. But, they're like, because, we know better. And then I go, well, how do you know better? And they're like, well, I learned values from X, Y, and Z. So I think the question we need to start asking in our school systems, at home, with parents, with kids, is, are we listening to our kids, and are we teaching them values, and are we letting them have a chance to express themselves? Speak to your kids about the video games. Let's see what's going on.
Ask them what they think. Yeah. So let's go back to some other programs that you're doing.
Sure.
Now, well, and other things that you did. You guys did a lot for victims of Sandy.
Yes.
A lot. How many of your kids were affected? Because it hit Queens.
I just feel like we were all, I don't know, I don't have an exact, I just feel like we were all impacted.
Yeah.
It hit Queens, and when I always have a theory, and one of our, we'll talk about my other project coming up that we're doing in Haiti. Like, usually when there's like a global or national tragedy, I usually don't jump right away to help people. I'm usually the organization that takes a step back, sees where everything falls, and then figure out where we can be most effective. But Sandy hit, it was different. It was our backyard. It was our friends, our family, and the devastation was we just had to, jump right away. And
did many of your kids, their families lose their houses?
A lot of kids lost power. Some people were put out of their homes and put into shelters. People were relocated, into new apartments.
So what were some of the things you guys actually did?
We spent a lot of time down in Far Rockaway and Long Beach. We were with all the other amazing organizations in New York that, we put on our sneakers and work boots, and we just dove in, and we started cleaning out houses and pulling out rubble, and we saw stores and storefronts destroyed. We just drove in with a group of kids, and we started pulling out refrigerators and beds and couches and garbage and rubble, and we helped with the cleanup, and we were doing it for weeks. It felt like it was never going to end.
I saw on Facebook you guys posted a picture. It was something like you all helped clean out somebody's basement.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, God bless them. God bless them. So how long did you guys help with that?
A few months. I mean, we were at it for a few months straight, and it kind of it was interesting because, at this point of the agency's existence, we have a set time frame of this happens in September, this happens in October. When Sandy happened, all the programs almost came to a halt temporarily.
Yeah. How did you handle that?
It was tough. It threw off the whole year for the most part, and then when, after things had started to settle, we did a lot of catching up and trying to fill in the gaps that we were behind on. But Sandy and our neighbors and our families and friends became our priority.
Well, that's what matters.
Yeah.
That's what matters is when you have kids who are aren't in their homes and are having to stay in shelters. I mean, that affects their whole lives. And I really acknowledge you guys for the work that you all did for other people, because it's things like that that happen when you're a kid that really shape you as an adult later on. I think the things that when we had situations like that when I was a kid, and my dad saying to me, we had a neighbor, elderly couple who lived next to us, and the gentleman fell and broke his hip, and my dad was the one who happened to find him. And from then on, because my brothers are a whole lot younger, when I would mow the yard, Dad would say, just go ahead and mow theirs. Just do it. Right. just do that. When you rake the leaves, just go ahead and do theirs.
Right.
And it's things like that. You don't realize how much it really shapes kids.
Yes.
But it really does. So it's things like these things that happen with Sandy that really shape how they're going to see the future and how they're going to raise their kids.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I take my hat off to you.
Thank you. And you know, it serves a double purpose too, because the kids that we're working with, you know, that's part of being leaders too.
Yeah.
You know, in their growth is like, they jump in and they realize that there's something that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And the bigger picture of all that, through all that tragedy and pain, is like you're driving down the street of Far Rockaway and you realize when there's tragedy, and we saw this last with 9/11, you know, there is a tremendous amount of love in New York City. And there's a tremendous amount of love around the world. You know, we turn on the news and we see a lot of negative stuff, you know, and I feel like we should have like a half an hour a night of all the good stuff going on.
All the great things you can. Yeah.
There's tremendous beauty in this world.
Now, what's this about? You guys are going to Haiti again?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, we connected with an organization called From Here to Haiti, which is based out of Queens also.
Oh, cool.
The executive director was our Unsung Hero Award. It's an award we give out every year at the Short Stack Fashion Show. And she has an amazing organization, and she brings people down to Haiti to help in the rebuilding efforts since the earthquake of 2010, 11,
something like that.
And they're still rebuilding down there. So she fell in love with the Short Stack program, and so we started talking about how great would it be to take off the high heels and put on work boots.
Oh, I love it.
And we're going to fly a bunch of models down there with a film crew, and we're going to do a documentary film as well. And we're helping to rebuild 2 churches.
Oh, wow.
We're doing 2 fashion shows, and we're doing self-esteem leadership programs in a school.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's going to be phenomenal.
That's amazing.
Yes.
How has your work impacted you?
Me?
Yeah. Take a moment and look at your life and say, how has this impacted you?
It's changed everything. I mean, it's changed my whole entire life. Like, this is my life. Like, I've committed myself to wanting to do this work. You know, so I have a global vision and I have a New York City vision. Like I have a passion for doing all the work that has to be done here in New York City, and I love traveling the world and doing projects around the world and impacting youth around the world. And this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, and it makes me feel like my life has purpose.
I can't even. I keep complimenting you. Funding. How are you guys funded?
We get funded mostly by private donations. You know, we have a couple of contracts that we work through Medicaid that helps to pay the monthly bills, and I feel really blessed for that. But our funding comes from special events like the Short Stack Fashion Show. We're doing an open mic on October 12th coming up, and little programs here and there, car washes. We look for corporate sponsors all the time.
Corporate sponsors.
We write grants. The grant pool is very competitive.
It's really hard to get grants.
It's very difficult.
I've written a couple of grants before. That ain't fun.
But we're out there. We're looking for support all the time. We have a long-term vision, and we have our short-term goals, and we'll hopefully bring on more companies to support us.
Very good. And for more information, there's also your website, which is wooinc.org, WOOINC.org. You can also find more on my website, which is YouBetterTV. That's YOUBETTER.com. And you guys tweet? What's your Twitter?
We have a bunch of Twitters, but it's twitter.com/wooinc.
Wooinc, twitter.com/wooinc. And really quickly, Bon Jovi concerts. What number are you up to now?
I'm up to 59, and it's
59.
It's a very sore topic with me because I was one of your old TV shows.
I did, yeah. Last time I think I interviewed you was what, number 30? You were at like 39, 37?
Something like that. But I was holding out number 60 for the Super Bowl because I really wanted to Super Bowl, and they're not playing the Super Bowl, and I'm very disappointed.
Bruno Mars.
You know, no offense to Bruno Mars, you know, he's very talented and a singer, but this is New York.
Yeah.
New York, New Jersey. It belongs to Bon Jovi or Springsteen or, I mean, even give me Jay-Z. Give me somebody from New York.
Somebody from New York. I got it.
But no offense, Bruno. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much for being here with me today. It's always a pleasure to get to talk to you. I always have a party. And so my website is youbettertv.com. Tweet me, Julia Maddox, NYC. I tweet a lot. You can also Facebook us at YouBetterTV. And my email, you can, if you have further questions, it's juliamaddox@outlook.com. And I want to thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you.